Out front now, Democratic Congressman Adam Smith. He's a ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, it's good to have you with us. I want to start with the newest information into us here. The president just posting a short time ago, just before the top of the hour, that the U.S. military had, in his words, obliterated every military target in Iran's crown jewel, Karg Island. This is considered Iran's lifeline. What's interesting, too, is this happened, this post coming just hours after Fox had published an interview with Trump where he was clearly irritated by a question about that island. Here's that moment.
Are you thinking about taking Karg Island, where 90% of the Iranian oil goes through? And what do you think about, do you remember that interview and that school of thought?
Yeah, but Brian, I can't answer a question like that. You shouldn't ask it. You shouldn't be even asking it.
I mean, when it comes to this, he also, I should note, in this Truth Social post, it said that he spared the oil infrastructure from being wiped out, but threatened to reconsider that decision if ships can't pass safely through the Strait of Hormuz. What does this tell you about where the war is headed?
Well, I think, and you need to focus on the report a little bit that you showed right before this of the devastating attack in Beirut that killed those 9 people and 5 children. The cost of this war is expanding. And the civilian deaths, obviously, we've lost 13 service members, the devastation to the global economy. We have a full-scale Middle East war that Donald Trump kicked off, and the cost is enormous. And it tells me, with the Karg Island attack, that this is all very far from being over. President Trump uses words about obliterated all the time, but we are still a long way from achieving the objectives that he set out, and there's no clear path to achieve those objectives. Now, Karg Island specifically, if we were to shut that off, that is a lifeline for Iran. I'm told that somewhere between 80 to 90% of their oil goes through that spot. If they could not use it, it would have a devastating economic impact on Iran. It's a strategic asset without any question.
So that's a strategic asset. How much, I mean, is it an asset that the U.S. should have gone after sooner, in your view?
Well, I mean, it depends on what we're trying to do here. I mean, supposedly what we're trying to do is reduce Iran's military capacity, all right? And that's targeting their missiles. This is not part of their military capacity. This is part of their economy. Second thing about that is supposedly we're trying to get rid of the regime in favor of the Iranian people. So you don't want to completely destroy their economy so that the Iranian people starve. That could push them back in favor of the regime and against that. So, and that all gets into the issue of what exactly is Trump trying to accomplish here. He talks about diminishing the military capacity, but we don't have a clear idea of how far that has to go. How much does it have to be reduced by? And then second, he supposedly wants to change the regime so that they don't just rebuild it and you don't have the same hostile people in charge. There's no path for achieving that objective right now either.
And there's a lot to follow. We also have this new reporting, of course, that from the U.S. side that some 2,500 potentially Marines and soldiers could be on their way now to the region. I also want to ask you about this, which I was struck by when it came out earlier today. President Trump's Political Action Committee is using an image of Trump at Saturday's dignified transfer to honor the 6 U.S. soldiers who were killed in this war, the first 6 who were killed. This is being used in a fundraising email. And in addition to that image, the email promises access to the president's private national security briefing, urging recipients to claim your spot with a link to donate. Now, neither the White House nor the RNC returned our request for comment about the email. It was first reported on by Patriot Takes, but I'm curious your reaction to that email, that fundraising email.
Well, the entire way that President Trump and Secretary Hegseth are talking about this war is disgusting, even independent of the military problems that I just outlined. What are we trying to accomplish? The costs are high. Are we really headed towards any particular goal, and can they clearly articulate that? But they are treating this like some kind of video game, like some kind of thing that we should just be proud of the fact that we're blowing stuff up and using it for political advantage. That is not the way the United States of America should go to war. And I know people like, I don't know, it's really frustrating to watch this. You know, the old saying about, you know, America will cease to be great if they are no longer good. If you have to do something militarily to protect the national security interests of those countries, then you do it. But historically, you do it solemnly and with a full understanding of the cost. And if you don't understand the cost, you are more likely to keep doing it past the point where that cost outweighs the benefit. So the degree to which they trivialize the cost, try to politicize the cost, make this into like we're rooting for a basketball team or something, that really undermines the credibility of our country. And it also makes it more difficult to make intelligent decisions about whether or not the benefits of this war are worth the cost. I don't think they are. I think it's clear that they're not. This makes it clear that the president and his leadership aren't even really analyzing that question in a somber, intelligent way as they should.
Congressman Adam Smith, appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for the chance.
Out front next, new details on the close relationship between the former Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson, and Jeffrey Epstein.